We do know at the moment that the SAFA presidential elections, or that conference, will be held on the 25th of June as it stands, and that's important to highlight. And after the dramatic scenes that we saw yesterday at the would-be launch of Rea Ledwaba's presidential campaign, it wouldn't be surprising really to see things go some other way and that election put into another date. But as it stands, it's still the 25th of June. And one of the people who had a lot to say at that press conference yesterday is former CEO of the organization, of the association, Mr. Dennis Mumble. And he is joining me here in studio today, and he's going to be talking about some of the things that he had to say there, or expanding a little bit more. But before I talk to Mr. Mumble, I just want to give you context of what is happening and what he had to say. Here is Mr. Dennis Mumble, CEO or former CEO of the association, speaking yesterday.
The reason why I left in 2018 was specifically because there were things that I was asked to do in that election which I refused to do. And Ace Mumble will tell you. Because you can't go around threatening everybody in the world who criticizes the South African Football Association, threatening them with discipline and expulsion. That's what happened with Ace. There are charges that have been leveled against Ace, or at least charges that have been drafted against Ace, which I refuse to put before a disciplinary committee, because that's what I was asked to do. 31 or 32 charges. No, you must go and charge him. For what? For running as a presidential candidate? No. That's why I'm out of South African football.
Yeah. As I said earlier, it was dramatic, and it looked like a Hollywood blockbuster yesterday at the Nelson Mandela Foundation. Mr. Mumble is smiling here, a different picture from what we saw yesterday. And this was after a question I had asked you in that press conference, Mr. Mumble, about you having been a comrade of President or SAFA President Denny Jordan in the past, which you categorically denied. But I'm interested more, let's go straight to those allegations. Ace Ngobo was running for SAFA presidency in 2018, and you are alleging that there were over 30 charges that were drafted, that you were supposed to put him before a disciplinary hearing or committee or something like that. What were those charges?
You know, during a presidential... good morning, sorry.
Thank you.
Good morning to everyone out there, and thanks for having me. You know, in an election campaign, people, will come with criticism of either the incumbent or the organization, or stress what it is that they actually stand for, where they would like to take the organization. And in that process, things are said back and forth, which I think is understandable because it is political speech that is being uttered. And so you have to allow some leeway for people to be able to express themselves about where they would like to take the organization, because obviously they would like to succeed the incumbent, and therefore they may have to, or they will have to point out where the incumbent may have gone wrong. But in that process, I was pressured, and I don't want to speak for other people, but those people who were working under me were also under pressure to draft these charges. In fact, many letters went out to those people.
You were pressured by who?
Let me... I'm hesitant to use names here, but yes, the SAFA president, first and foremost,
Dr. Denny Jordan,
was not happy with, obviously, what Ace and his group of supporters had to say. So we issued, and I say we, because I was part of that process. We issued letters against those people for speaking out about where they stood and what they thought about the association itself. Many letters went out in 2018. And you can ask people may probably let you know that they've received lawyers' letters from SAFA in the same way that it's happening now. People who are criticizing SAFA are receiving lawyers' letters. you know, for what reason, for expressing themselves and their unhappiness about where the South African Football Association is going. The same thing happened in 2018. So
in your view, intimidation tactics
yes,
ahead of an election,
absolutely,
as it's happening now, in your view, as it was in 2018.
Yes.
And Nyobo was intimidated out of the running of the race because he pulled out on the morning of the election.
Yeah.
He was pushed.
Yeah, well, you know, Ace can't be intimidated. He's not. I don't think he's the type of person. I'm not close to Ace, but he's not the type of person who can be intimidated. But I think, given the environment at that time, clearly the majority was against him in the Congress of 28th of May 2018. And I think he made his point, and I think he said many times throughout the campaign that he'd made his point. Yeah. And it was not necessary for him to go ahead. I think he wanted to conscientize the South African public about what's happening in South African football.
So you then refused to charge Ace Nyobo as the CEO of the organization at the time. Yep. Were you given an ultimatum were you also then pushed out of SAFA?
Well, I had, you will remember that I issued a report after I left because when I left there was negotiations about me staying and you know, or coming back after I'd actually left at the end of August because I had a lot of leave coming to me, so I took the month of September off because I was supposed to finish at the end of September. But I had a lot of issues that I raised which were never dealt with. And at the point where, you know, I decided that I can't stay any longer because those issues were not being addressed, is when the negotiations started with the vice presidents of the organization who were supposed to negotiate a new contract with me. But none of those issues were addressed. And one of those issues, obviously, was the conduct of the SAFA president during that election campaign. But also his own ambition of becoming an executive president of the organization, which I was not prepared to accept. And I think the biggest reason for me is a combination of what happened during that election campaign, as well as this notion that he can become an executive president.
Right now, fast forward to 2022, Ria Ledwaba yesterday unable to launch her campaign, and there is a letter that has done the rounds that she cannot present herself to the media or to the public until after the CEO, who is now Advocate Teboho Motlanthe, after he makes public the list of candidates after the vetting process by the recently formed governance committee. You then said this election has no rules. The rules are being made up as we go along. What does that mean? Is it not, has it changed? Is there a rule that says you cannot launch your presidential campaign at this point, just over 2 months to the election?
There's no such rule. And I challenge the South African Football Association to come and show me where that rule is. You see, the South African Football Association is an organization of rules. It's governed by its constitution and its associated rules and regulations. Those rules and regulations are intended to give effect to those broad principles in the constitution itself. And there used to be, or there is an electoral code which they think, and I'm very deliberate in saying they think that they have done away with that electoral code. Now, that electoral code governs the elections of the South African Football Association, and that electoral code emanates from FIFA. FIFA has a standard electoral code that it republished in 2021. In September 2021, it republished that electoral code as part of the FIFA handbook of what all federations, all of the member associations of FIFA are supposed to follow. And now, SAFA removed any reference to the electoral code from the statutes, from its constitution this year on the 26th of March. thinking that that will do away with the code. But no, it doesn't, because the same statutes that they just approved, as well as all of the old statutes of SAFA, says any decision of the SAFA Congress must be rescinded by a 2/3 majority vote for it no longer to become or to be effective.
Was it not the case at the, I think it was March 26th, Congress at the Sandton Convention Center? Was there no 2/3 majority vote on the amendment of the Constitution?
Well, it's not so much about the amendment. Yes, there was a majority that approved the amendments at the Congress, which I still have to question, because there's a lot of things that I don't think they know and truly appreciate what they approve.
And sorry, Mr. Mumble, just to let our viewers know that you would be the authority on the SAFA electoral code and code of conduct and the statutes, because you were part of drafting those.
Yeah, well, many of the regulations in SAFA since 2010, I either did it myself, or I worked with a team that did it. You know, the standard statutes, I worked with a team on that. The basic framework of the current SAFA statutes, I did that in 2010 and 2011. It was presented to the Congress by Chief Nonkonyana. And a number of the rules that now are in effect in SAFA, I actually wrote those myself, because it was my responsibility to do so. As the COO, prior to me taking the position of CEO, I had to do a lot of that work along with the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee of the association. So
what is happening now, according to you, is illegal by SAFA?
Yeah, I'm very clear about that. They must show what rule it is that says to them that candidates cannot campaign until 14 days before the election. Now, in 2009, there was a campaign that really sought some, transformational change in the South African Football Association. That campaign started more than a year before the election. The group that actually took over, that won the election in 2009, had their first meeting in December of 2008. In the 2013 election, that process started.
This is going into the Kirsten.
Yeah, that's the 2009 is when Kirsten Namatandani was elected. In 2013, the next election, that campaign also started very early on. I think it was about 9 or 10 months before. In 2018, the same thing started. You know that Ace Noba didn't start speaking 14 days before the campaign. Why all of a sudden is there a new rule now that doesn't exist? And I challenge anybody to show me where in South African football's rules that rule exists. It doesn't exist.
What do you think of also another amendment at that Congress on the 26th of March that allows the incumbent president of the association to run for another term?
There are no rules again. There are no term limits in South African football. So, yes, he has a right to run again. It's not ideal. I think the South African public has also made it clear, and many people in the structures have made it clear, perhaps 2 terms is enough. But there's no impediment to him running again.
And then there was a motion raised to allow club bosses, club chairmen to run, to be allowed to run for presidency, which was, I don't know what the right term to use is, which was not successful. Yes, that motion. What's your view?
Yeah, I'm not so sure whether there was a motion. I think it's more the principle that was questioned as to whether a club boss or a club owner or a club chairman can run and become the president of the South African Football Association. I think the argument is weak and has become weak because there was this notion that if you are the president of the Football Association and you own a club, those people that you put into office, on committees, the disciplinary committees, the appeals committees, and other standing committees, that those people would favor your club just by default, just to try and get your favor. And so there's always a risk of that happening. But the language also, I think the principle should also allow you to be able to run, occupy the seat, but on condition that you distance yourself from the club. Either you resign or you put your club in some blind trust somewhere, and really don't have any continuing relationship, day-to-day relationship with your club. There's nothing that can stop anyone from supporting a club anywhere. Even the current president, is a supporter of a club. He doesn't own a club, but he's a supporter of a club. And we all know which club that is. So can you stop someone with an affiliation to a club from occupying the seat of president? Remember, every single official in South African football comes from a club somewhere. So it's impossible not to have a link to a club.
All right. Mr. Mumble, is South African football worse off under the leadership of Danny Jordan since he took over the reins? And I say South African football as a whole because even the professional arm of SA football is an affiliate, if I can put it like that, of SAFA, which is a member of FIFA. SAFA is a member of FIFA, not the PSL.
Yeah.
Is South African football worse off under Danny Jordan?
I think on balance, I would say lately, yes. We are not moving in the right direction. I mentioned yesterday the fact that Bafana Bafana is not qualified for both the Africa Cup of Nations that was played in 2022 or the World Cup that's coming up in Qatar in November of this year. The fact that the team has not been able to qualify for a major competition or sporadically qualifies for a major competition says there's a problem that is not being identified properly and addressed properly. And to that extent, yes. And then we have a problem now with the governance system, the elections being a part of that. I think there's several failures in the governance system that needs to be rectified. So I don't think South African football is on the right track.
If SAFA comes and says, here's a list of our achievements from when the current NEC started to serve, and you can count the fact that Banyana went to the World Cup in 2019, their first ever. You can count, I think I can count 2 World Cups for the under-17s, if I'm not mistaken. I can count one for the under-20s. I can count the Olympics for the under-23 team, although the recent ones we were not there. Are those not some of the things which you can say are moving in the right direction? Or should we solely judge the association by the performance, success or not, of the flagship national team, which is Bafana Bafana?
Well, I want to agree with you because I think there's a this argument has been going on for a very long time. Our junior teams have been qualifying not just in the last couple of years, they've been qualifying for major competitions for the last 10 or 12 years. So it's nothing new that there's been success at the junior team level, and there's been success at the women's football level, despite the challenges that they have faced. And I don't think you can put the blame squarely on, let's say, the National Executive Committee for a lot of the underachievement of the senior national team, but somehow that success at the junior level must translate into success at the senior level. And that transition there is not taking place. And I don't see that being addressed by the leadership. They may not be blamed for those conditions that precede that transition, but they must deal, that's their responsibility, they must deal with what happens there during that transition from success at the junior level to success at the senior level. And I think that's what's missing here. And then the problem gets compounded by the fact that the governance system is going awry, and they are not governing the organization properly. Yeah. And that's where I think I have a great difficulty, you see.
I have to squeeze this in 25 seconds, Mr. Mumble. We're out of time. Should Danny Jordan go?
Yes.
Okay, that was less than 25 seconds. Mr. Dennis Mumble, thank you so much for your explanation of the rules. Thank you for clarity on the allegations that you made yesterday against the association, and you made it very clear that Dr. Dennis Jordan tried to coerce you to charge Ngoba in the lead-up to the 2018 election. And there's no rule, importantly, that, according to Mr. Mumble, that says Rea Ledwaba cannot launch her presidential campaign now and only days before the election that's coming up on the 25th of June. Let's put it out there that we did put out an invitation to Dr. Dennis Jordan, the president of the association, to come and be a part of this discussion, and he declined that invitation. So it's still open. We're open to having Dr. Jordan on the show. Thank you so much, sir.